Didn't talk at the first day, a couple of days of media day. And then the first day of practice later, he basically announced he intends to coach this season without a contract.
Without a contract extension. He has a contract.
Without a contract extension, yes. He has a contract for this year. Did that surprise you? And what do you make of that as you look at the Warriors going forward here?
Yes, I was surprised he was so transparent publicly that he's not even seeking one. Because this happened a few years ago where he was on, you would call it the lame duck season, which he would say, he's more comfortable than your normal coach going into a lame duck season for a variety of reasons. But they were having ongoing negotiations that season, and it got done, I think, in maybe February, where he signed an extension. So for him to not only say, hey, I wasn't surprised he said, I'm not concerned and I'm not going to let it become a storyline. But the fact that he said, I'm not even going to seek one and we're just going to wait and see until next summer, that raised the eyebrow a little bit, especially because we all know Steph has 2 more years on his deal. Jimmy Butler has 2 more years on his deal. Draymond Green has 1 and 1. He has a player option, but basically 2 more years on his deal. And the presumption was he would want it lined up with that. But the fact that he didn't, I think there's a few reasons for it, and we can go over it. But the one thing I will say is, you mentioned, I have a story coming out with Steve later this week. It's about Steve Kerr and Steph Curry's relationship, and within it, he clarified with me he will not leave the Warriors for another NBA job. He's not leaving it open-ended because the Spurs is appealing to him or this or that. It's going to either be they get to the end of the season and maybe it's like step away from the game, or what I think is more likely, and he's kind of hinting, it's like he still thinks he'll very likely be the coach of the Warriors beyond the season, but it just has to go right and it has to feel right after the season. But as of right now, I would definitely predict this is not his last season. Okay,
so Vinny, this is not Last Dance energy, I think, is what I'm trying to feel.
Well, he went through that, and he knows how exhausting that is. Like Phil Jackson on the last year, Jordan on the last year, Pippen on the last year, Rodman, like all those guys were free agents. Like these guys, it's not really like that. And I'm not sure there's this, and Slater, you tell me if I'm wrong, I don't sense that there's the same organizational fatigue that even in 2019, the last year of Kevin Durant, like that seemed very fatiguing. This season or even last year, like that energy didn't seem like, man, this is a slog. Can't wait till this is over to get to the next thing. I don't think they're fresh as daisies, but I think they're all curious, and I think that's why maybe Steve is sort of leaving his options open. The option of coaching the Warriors beyond this year.
Yeah. I mean, Steph's called it a 2-year window, so I think they're almost talking, if the Last Dance would be maybe a 2-year walk towards that. And then the other thing, I think it was buried within his answer that you're talking about, but he is of the belief that this era for the dignitary should end as gracefully as possible. It already kind of hasn't.
Well, that's Last Dance. That's Last Dance inspired right there.
Yes, 100%. And his history's kind of mixed into all this. But Klay Thompson, the fact that didn't end the way that they would have hoped, Klay Thompson's final days at Golden State, I think that was informative to him. When Draymond Green a couple of years ago was going through the suspensions and the mess with the league and all that, one of the very influential conversations that I think got Draymond Green back on the right path was Steve Kerr went to his house, and apparently they were even kind of crying, talking about he wanted Draymond for it to end well for Draymond with the Warriors and with the NBA, and that there was so much more beyond, and that it was important for them to like I said, go out gracefully. And I think part of why he is taking his contract negotiations this way and saying the end needs to go this way is because I think he's trying to set an example that this needs to be a very polite farewell, and he's going I don't think he's number one, I don't think he's getting fired. Number two, when he is not coaching the Warriors, I think they're gonna have a press conference announcing it in a celebratory manner basically, and I think that's him setting the stage for that.
Well, Vinny, you spent a lot of time in Chicago, and I don't know if you were at the game the night when the Warriors were in Chicago a couple years ago. You were probably there, Slater, when they honored one of the Bulls teams. I don't know which.
I was there.
I know where you're going.
And Jerry Krause's widow. She wasn't getting booed. Jerry Krause was getting booed. And I thought it was a relevant thing that the Warriors were there. I assume ostensibly so Steve could be a part of it.
He was a part of it.
And it was at halftime, right? And Steve was out there. And
Nothing
and now
ends
Jordan and
gracefully in the
Pippen aren't
NBA.
talking.
Nothing ends gracefully in the NBA. When you look at modern NBA history, not to hijack you, Wendy,
No, please.
the Bulls, the closest thing I think to a graceful ending was probably Tim Duncan walking off in Oklahoma City when they lost in 2016. What was that, Game 5 or Game 6? And they gave him a standing ovation at the end of that. But I'm sure you were, yeah. Every great dynasty, the Bulls didn't end gracefully. Like, Jordan is still bitter as hell. Like, Magic caught HIV, Bird's back went out. You like, when you think of the dynastic group, even the Kobe Bryant Lakers, that they went out with Andrew Bynum putting his forearm in the chest of poor JJ Barea, and Phil Jackson punching Pau Gasol in the locker room. Like, none of this, I think it's honorable for Steve Kerr to say this is going to go out gracefully. But when you got Jimmy Butler and then Draymond Green in the locker room, you think they're going to be concerned about going out gracefully? Has he met them?
Well, it's already not ending gracefully because, where is the Clay relationship right now, Slater?
Afraid, but that's more pointed towards the top of the organization, the management, how the contract stuff went then at the Steve Curry, Draymond aspect. But you're right. I think, but this is Steve saying his chapter is going to end gracefully, and I think he's very much of the belief that Steph Curry's is going to. And again, that may mean a bad playoff exit in the final year or whatever. Like, it's not like he's saying we're going to win a title and then walk away, but it's more like Steph will have a celebrated final chapter with the Warriors, and I think he has really tried to redirect Draymond back to that after there's been various points where it seemed like it was going haywire. And I can remember being at the press conference after the Jordan Poole punch in the preseason being like, this might be it, for Draymond. And now he's part of the, I'm writing this story about Steph and Steve and their 12 years together, and he tries to rope Draymond in the conversation because it's 12 years with Draymond, and there's kind of a belief that he's going to kind of ride it out in this chapter. And they've been reinvigorated by the Butler edition, the Al Horford edition. So again, I'm not predicting a title and it's going to end like storybook Disney like, but I do think there is intention to make it end in a way where they're honoring what they were.
Yeah, I'll never forget the story. It was during the 22 finals where they were ahead 3-2, and they'd come back for Game 6. They ended up closing out Game 6 in the night game. And before the game, Draymond tells the story that when they flew out to Boston from San Francisco, that they happened to sit at the NBA Jets have like 4 seats together with a card table in between them.
Basically.
Yeah. Typically, it's for card play. There's a couple of them, but I couldn't hang on those in those games. But apparently, it just so happened that particular flight, the 4 seats were Bob Myers, Draymond, Klay Thompson, and Steph Curry, and the 4 of them had been there for the whole run. There had been some guys come and go. Sean Livingston was obviously a core member, but he had retired. Kevon Looney has been there for most of it, but I don't. Those were the core guys, and Bob was talking to him at the moment like how rare it is to be able to stay together for this long, to go through what they went through, to go through the highs of 2014-15, the lows of 2019, and then the rebuild where Steph played 5 games the one year, and now they're back on top and they win. And I asked Bob about it later, and he's like, me and Draymond were talking about it seriously. Steph was just politely listening, and Klay was sleeping. It's not as storybook as it sounded, but within like months, Klay and Bob were gone. And so, in all honesty, I mean, Steve would be a part of that group too. He wasn't sitting there. Steve is obviously a part of that group, but in the case of Myers was around even longer. Myers drafted Klay, drafted Draymond. So, but it is rare that it would end that way. Okay, so to shift to this year's Warriors. When Shams' story came out about Giannis and the Knicks, my thoughts immediately turned to Golden State, because I know that Giannis said, I'm here for 6 or 7 months. It was kind of his way of saying without saying that he's going to play this season in Milwaukee. I think those were the words that was the message he was trying to send. And